Okay, trying to improve your groove. Now I'm sure that most of us here play along with records, and that's one fantastic way to improve your groove, because when I was a kid growing up, I used to play with records all the time, and I was a big fan of the Allman Brothers Band when I was younger, and I used to try to play both drum parts like at one time, so that kind of helped me get some good coordination things going on. But ways to improve your groove is, number one, if you're playing with a band or with musicians, number one is listen to the bass player, okay? Because the drummer and the bass player are peanut butter and jelly. So anytime that you're playing, listen to your bass player. If he's a bad bass player, maybe not. But listen to the bass player. One of the resources I like to use with my students is Tommy Igoe's Groove Essentials. And if anybody isn't aware of that, I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end. But during the Groove Essentials, you're the drummer and you get to play along with the tracks. And in Groove 1, which is a very simple groove, you're just going like this. You're going... That's pretty much the groove, but what this CD does for you is it gives you musicians to play with who are really good, and what that bass is doing is the bass is also playing simple. The bass player is playing generally on 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1. And what that does for you is that lines up your bass drum and your snare drum pretty much. So the bass is going like boom, 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 boom. Even though that's simple, just if you happen to hit the snare drum too soon or the bass drum too soon, you're going to know it because the bass player is, right on the money. So number one is listen to the bass player. Number two is try a couple different things with your hi-hat and do some different things with your hi-hat accents. Most of us, when we play a simple beat, we have a tendency to accent the quarter note. So we would normally play this. But what I like to do a lot of times, and there's many drummers out there to get into that do the same idea. Steve Jordan, who's one of my favorite drummers, Brad Wilk from Audio Slave does this quite a bit as well. But they accent the upbeat or the ands. So instead it just makes it so much more funky and really grooving. So when you're playing this, start off, accent the quarters. So you see, it really just changes the whole complexion of the groove, and it's just a really interesting way especially for us drummers, that if we are playing with beat, they'll be fine to be not boring, but if it's kind of the same thing throughout a whole song, we can change our accent placement and it becomes a whole other different thing. So changing your accents right there. I want to show you one other thing that's really cool on ways to improve your groove is, I need my metronome, I'm going to put that out. Okay. Now this is something that's I really think is cool. Especially if you're trying to work with a metronome, most of us, the metronome is the enemy. Okay, so if you can't play good time, this is not your best friend. But one thing that really helps a lot to improve your groove is starting to add different subdivisions. When most people think of the metronome, they think of like Kong, 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 the cowbell sound, like beating you over the head. So if you do a studio session that night, this cowbell's still beating you over the head while you're trying to sleep. But what you can do is you can take this, and if I start off with something like quarter notes, here we go. Okay, so that's just a quarter note, and that's set at 90. 90 is a fairly common tempo. But if I just have to play a quarter note groove, if I'm doing a session, or if I'm just with my band rehearsing, if I have to play just quarter notes on the hi-hat and do a real simple groove, Something like this, okay? I'll play softly so you can still hear the metronome. It sounds like this. 3, 4. Okay, now, what can really help you to make that groove feel better is because I'm just going like this the whole time. If you don't have that lined up exactly with the metronome, it's gonna sound pretty stiff and it's really not gonna work and you're gonna notice that you're off. But here's what I like to do. A lot of times with the groove that's kind of mid-tempo and less, I like to add some eighth notes in there instead. So we go from this. So I'm just still playing that same hi-hat part. But now what helps this groove feel better? Go a step further, add some 16ths. And to me, that feels a heck of a lot better to do it with a lot of what are subdivisions in between the notes than to just keep it on the quarter note the entire time. And where this really comes in handy, now that's at 90 BPMs, fairly common tempo. If we go to some slow hip hop, D'Angelo, who's another one of those dudes? Like the slow hip hop guys that have got. There we go. Now this is a lot of real estate between the notes, folks. 3, 4. Okay? So to keep that in a good time, it's not easy. And it's probably going to sound like you're guessing, saying, where's the click in here? Okay, there it is. But if you add, this is a really good one for 16 notes. The 8s already feel better, right? Now, but you're just playing some real chilled out groove. Singing. You got to ride, the bone come along. Another thing I want you to take, you probably noticed too, when I'm playing, watch what my left leg does. And this is what, when we talk about gears that we can use outside of what we're just playing, there's different things you can use to also help with your groove. And what if you notice my left leg, I'm playing on all the ands. Even though I'm not doing that, I'm not physically playing that, just watch my left leg. 2, 3, 4. That's something that a microphone doesn't really detect. You can do in the studio. But what that's doing is just giving me another gear, so I don't have to sit there and feel like I'm having to go. Where's the, doing that whole thing. So using these different gears, I'll show you something else with you that I do as well, is since I was a kid, it sounds strange, I know, but I use my teeth a lot. Like when I was growing up, I used to always play the bass drum on the back teeth, and the front teeth would be like the snare drum, so I'd be going like, I know it's strange, but honestly it really helps with my time. So if I'm going like this, with my teeth, I might chatter some eighth notes, so I might be chattering like. So I'm going. See, I get a little swagger there too with the shoulders. You got to get funky. So These are ways, again, to review, is listen to the bass player, work on different accents with the hi-hat, and when you're practicing with the metronome, have some fun with it and use some different subdivisions to help everything feel better for you. Anybody have any questions on that stuff? Nobody?